So when we start looking at assistance, really, I guess, like looking at the later half of your career, what has been your experience? And not even necessarily just with personal use, but with considerations. Like, what was a part of the discussion for you and Jason?
For me, Jason always knew where I stood. Fashion, my closet, all of those things that I love doing as a human being of dressing and all that stuff became such a prominent thing for me, especially in that year of 2019 where I wasn't competing, where I was living life and enjoying building my closet now in a physique that I was going to be able to quote live in, like having jeans that I can live in at a comfortable weight and not having to have these dual wardrobes. Like that was like the first year that I didn't have a dual wardrobe. I got rid of like everything that was quote my contest prep clothing. I no longer had that anymore. First off, I didn't know, what size I was going to be when I competed again. But I just became so much more feminine about like how I dressed, about how I carried myself. And that for me, like, and Jason knew that that was always like a part of, he would joke around about that with me of like, you know, you are somebody that's going to wear denim. And I was like, I don't want to live in stretchy pants for the rest of my life. Like yes, I worked for Lululemon and I love fitwear and all that stuff, but that's not how I don't want to be confined to that. And that was like one of the biggest things is I was like, I like my flannel shirts. I like my jackets. I like my denim. Like I want those things to fit my body long term. And so even in the conversation of like PEDs of like my upper body was already kind of what I would say getting ahead of me. Like I was already starting to like be uncomfortable in certain shirts, in certain jackets. Even at my leanest, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still struggling here with these buttons. I'm still, not able to wear a denim jacket and be comfortable, even at my leanest, like lowest body weight, so to speak. And, the conversation of where wellness was going, it was like, and seeing I think towards the end of the season, seeing, women like Urishna in person really puts into perspective of really what the size of those legs are and what your closet will potentially look like should your legs then look like that more permanently, so to speak. And then what do those legs look like in their off season when they are then in a healthy physique and healthy body? So all of these things started to kind of like play in my mind of what do I really love about my life now? What am I willing to maybe look like in the future? And it really did necessarily didn't boil down to, my sexual, I guess not my sexual, but what's what I'm looking for. Not like fertility wasn't necessarily the conversation. Virilization wasn't necessarily the conversation. It became a conversation of what do I view is the level of femininity I want to maintain for the rest of my life. I feel like the conversation of femininity meant a lot to me because I never really got to feel that way until I got a sex drive back more consistently. And then I got to feel more confident in my body and not feel like I was a really tiny little petite thing in bikini. Like my body was like, again, I didn't have the glutes, I didn't have the development there. So I was just literally like a tiny human in bikini. And I didn't have the curves and stuff that I now had. And again, the question of femininity was like always on my radar, and it was something that I talked about with a good friend of mine, Lloyd, of like, you know, how do I want to look at 45? How do I want to look at 55? And I was already starting to see the signs of what even a small amount of assistance was doing to my face, to my pores. I was already seeing that, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is taking me in a level that in a direction that I don't really foresee me being happy with my level of femininity moving forward. So, and everybody's level of femininity and their threshold is totally different. And, what they deem feminine. And like I said, I didn't know what I didn't have until I had it. Like I actually had like a butt that had fat on it. I actually had boobs that I didn't have to buy. I mean, I bought mine, but like now I actually have more actual body fat on my boobs and they're not just these like orbs sitting there on my chest with like, you can see the implant etched out. Like now that there's something there, they actually like look better, and people are like, oh wow, I don't even know you have a boob job. Like again, it was just like certain things that I didn't know until I had them, what it was like to have them. And so my own level of femininity changed to where I just got to experience something different. And that became more of the conversation piece. It wasn't like virilization. It wasn't necessarily about the voice or anything like that. It was just, what's feminine to me and what's going to be feminine to me and for me moving forward. And like I said, that spectrum is totally individual. And, again, I made certain decisions that I think some women may not make decisions because, again, everybody has something different.
Totally, totally. I love that. And it's something that in light of really the last several years now, talking about PEDs and the risk, I guess, really related to the androgenic components, I've tried to be careful around the dialogue and the vernacular I'm using, because I think
Mhm.
oftentimes I am speaking to the more risk averse female athlete, but I
Mhm.
don't want that to be ever condemned as like
Yeah.
anything but this is wrong. And I think that's where it's really important with the, I guess, the conversation around female PED use shifting and becoming more prevalent, becoming more of a thing that is discussed, for the clarification that just because, someone might deem this as too far or not feminine or a loss of femininity, it doesn't mean that definition, like, you have to accept as your own.
Mhm.
But I think within that, it's so important to be clear and just overly specific about what it means to be feminine and what it means to no longer be feminine.